Yo, so y'all know the drill at this point. Let's see who we can piss off today by simply talking about the most well-respected tier list in the Honkai Star Rail community, at least on the EN side of things, right? So we're here again at pridewin.gg, taking a look at the Memory of Chaos tier list for August, aka Patch 2.4 Part 2, because we have Jiaoqiu in the mix now, and I want to talk about his placement because it makes sense that he ended up here, but I don't think it truly paints the picture of how much of an impact this guy has. However, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to make an impact for everybody, so let's go ahead and talk about this. Jiaoqiu ended up landing here on day 1 at tier 1, meaning that he is a meta character. The guy is good, okay, because he's at the top of the meta characters category here. The apex characters are above him, and let's go ahead and talk about that. Poor guy, he's in the amplifier slot. The amplifiers are essentially like support characters. It's the toughest crowd in the game. These are the most important and the best characters in the entire game. So the bro has some competition. You got Ron May up here at the literal top, the best character in the entire game. She literally works on any team you could possibly put her on. She is the actual queen. And then you got Robin over here making a huge impact. She's literally the only follow-up attack-centric support in the game. She makes an impact on a lot more teams than you'd expect her to make an impact on. Even Acheron teams can use Robin, believe it or not. If you haven't tried that out, go ahead and give it a shot. It's actually pretty good. Well, usually you want to use that on an E2 Acheron. If you don't have E2 Acheron, it may not be the best choice. If you also have an E2 Acheron, you could use Sparkle. I'm mentioning the Acheron situation because Jiaoqiu is relevant to the Acheron situation. He's quite literally her best support now for the Nihility slot. We'll talk about that more in a second. And then you have the Harmony Trailblazer, who, with the break effect meta going off as hard as it is obviously a very important character to have, and makes an impact in the game and in the current meta specifically. Now, the problem with Jiaoqiu is that Jiaoqiu is pretty much best used on an Acheron team and not necessarily as impactful everywhere else. Let me get into that. So, Jiaoqiu, technically a DOT debuffer, but is he going to be able to replace Kafka on a DOT team? No. Is he going to be able to replace Black Swan on a DO team? No. He does have some noteworthy debuffs. He's an upgrade to a Guanifan on a DOT team, to be fair, but is he necessarily going to be slotted out for a Kafka or a Black Swan? No. Now, if you're a new character to the game, maybe you would use him on a DOT team, or if you're a new character to the game, rather than use Pela, you could use him, but Pela is probably somebody you can get for free because she's a 4-star and you're probably going to get a lot of free copies of her. But to be fair, at E6, she's not exactly as good as Jiaoqiu is now. Anywhere else you could have put a Pela, you can basically put Jiaoqiu and he's gonna kick booty, okay? He's gonna kick ass, all right? So, yeah, maybe if you're new to the game and you have a Yun Li or a Jing Liu, Dan Heng, or somebody that hits like multiple enemies at once, that you would benefit from having multiple debuffs on enemies at once with a Jiaoqiu, he can still work there. Don't get it twisted, he's still really, really good. But this tier list is based on top level play, okay? The meta, okay? And that is why he sits up here at tier 1. That's why Pela, honestly, it's a crime that Pela was down here at tier 1.5. She should have been up here with everybody else, right? I've been saying this for so long, man. Like, she deserved to be up here with Silverwolf and Ting Yun. Every once in a while, she does get, like, bumped up to where Silverwolf is, sometimes above where Silverwolf is, but, you know, it is what it is. Some people just don't recognize, you know, the one of the god tier 4-stars in the game, right? It took forever for people to recognize how good Ting Yun was. It literally took almost a year before people recognized how good Ting Yun was. It was insane. Like, she was literally god tier on day 1, and it took forever for people to recognize that. But wherever you could have put a Pela, you can now put a Jiaoqiu, and you're gonna, you know, if you have him built properly, it's gonna be better in most cases. I can't even think of a scenario where Pela is gonna be better than Jiaoqiu now. Like, there might be some specific niche situations where having a debuffing team, or sorry, having a defense down team is really good. So if you're running like a Jingliu with her light cone, right? She has defense ignore. You pair her with a Pela, and now you're ignoring a lot of defense, right? That's a pretty good combo to still have. But Jiaoqiu could also be impactful on that team. I think that's noteworthy and something that we maybe need to test out in person and do some maybe some spreadsheets on, right? Is that Pela on a defense down team, is she a better slot in than Jiaoqiu if you just switched her out for Jiaoqiu? I would be very interested in finding that out, because his debuff works completely differently than hers, right? She's the defense down character. He's more of like the enemy takes more damage kind of a guy. So I just wanted to point that out, right? And let's talk about like the more of the Acheron situation with Jiaoqiu. So Jiaoqiu is basically the Nihility slot best character for Acheron now. She gets buffs from her traces based on the amount of Nihility characters that you have on your team. If you have E0 or E1, you're going to want to use, in most cases, 2 Nihility characters. So now you can use Pela and Jiaoqiu. Oh, you're gonna be ulting a lot with that, okay? That is really, really good, okay? It is insanely strong. Now, if you have an E2 Acheron, now things get a little interesting, because you don't need as many Nihility characters to get the buff. You need, like, you're gonna get the full, you're gonna basically get the full buffs from her traces at E2, and you only need one other Nihility character besides her now in order to get that buff. However, it is still valuable to run Jiaoqiu and Pela even with E2 Acheron, because you're just ulting so much more with these two on the same team. Silver Wolf and Pela were still good together, but Silver Wolf was a little slower than Pela, and Silver Wolf is a little slower than Jiaoqiu. I would highly recommend trying out both Jiaoqiu and Pela. You need to build them really, really fast, and you need to build them for a ridiculous amount of effect hit rate. I would recommend going between like 150, maybe 160 or more effect hit rate on both of these characters. Make them super fast. Like, if you can get above 144 speed, that's amazing. Put on some sprightly Von Walk on them. The planar ornaments and planar rope, sprightly Von Walk. Allow them both to go first in the action order. That way they immediately start putting debuffs down. It's insanely strong. Now, if you have E2 Acheron, though, you don't necessarily have to run 2 Nihility characters. You can run 1. So, Jiaoqiu and Sparkle is basically a new super strong team to run with E2 Acheron. You could have used a Pela and a Sparkle. That's what I would use most of the time before this, because I have E2 Acheron. So I would most of the time end up using a Pela and a Sparkle, because, again, you don't have to have 2 Nihility characters besides her anymore with E2. You could also use Robin instead of Sparkle, allowing your entire team to act more often, allowing for more debuffs, etc., etc. However, with E2 Acheron and, E2 S1, so meaning that her light cone can also provide debuffs, Acheron, every single time she has a turn, can give herself 3 stacks. That's really strong. So putting up somebody like Sparkle and allowing her to go very, very often puts out a ton of damage and builds a ton of stacks really fast. But there are some situations where a Robin could actually function very well as well, because although your Acheron won't be quite as quick, because you won't be getting the action advance as much as you would have with your Sparkle, it is still very, very strong, right? It's still very, very good. So Robin, very, very good option for E2 Acheron. If you haven't tried it, go ahead and give it a shot. But again, Jiaoqiu is the best Nihility slot character now for Acheron, and I don't think it's that close. Like, here's the thing though. If you're not running an Acheron, right, at all, I would skip the guy. I'm gonna be honest. And I was honest in my review of him. If he's more niche, then he's very, very niche, right? If you're not running E2 Acheron, this is not you don't need to pull this guy, right? I don't necessarily think he is so valuable that you should use him instead of another amplifier or supportive character. I would say that, like, if you're running any other traditional DPS team, like outside of the follow-up meta, outside of the break effect meta, if you're using like Dan Heng, if you're using Jing Liu, you know, Yun Li, Jing Yuan, something like that, you probably would be better off having a Ron Mei or a Sparkle or a Robin or something like that. You know, even a frickin' Ting Yun, bro, super duper strong. And, you know, Jiaoqiu can still make an impact on those teams. I'm not saying don't pull the guy. I'm just saying that he is very niche, and you're not gonna want to regret pulling him just because of the hype. Okay, he's an instantly good character on one of the best teams in the entire game right now, and Acheron will be one of the best teams going forward for a long time, but that doesn't necessarily mean because of the hype you should pull him. You should pull him if you feel like you need him, or if you want your Acheron team to be even stronger. He's not a must pull, so just be aware of that. Now, there's not really any other changes to the tier list right now, because we haven't had a Memory of Chaos change in a little while. We are going to be getting one in like 2 weeks, and I already covered Yun Li in a different video. So I just wanted to cover Jiaoqiu's placement and kind of talk about his effect on the game right now. So if you guys enjoyed this, consider leaving a like and subscribe. I'll be doing some Jiaoqiu testing, and I'll make a video about that, testing him at E2 testing Acheron at E2 with her signature light cone with Jiaoqiu and Sparkle, which I'm probably going to show some of that because I already shot some of that footage earlier. Testing it with Robin, testing it with Pela and Jiaoqiu. I'm going to be testing a bunch of different combinations. Might take me like a couple of days to make the video, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, I'm yapping way too much. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.